Hello, everybody. Welcome to recent extreme events and what is on the horizon, our webinar of AMS Weather Band's 2024 Jamposium with Michael Musher, Doug LeCompte, and moderator Steve Glazier. Now, before we begin today, we'd like to address some of the guidelines for our webinar. First of all, if you have any questions during the webinar, please put them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen right there. We'll have some specific time for questions from the audience after the presentation, but you're of course welcome to submit questions throughout the presentation. Now I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Steve. Steve Glazier is an AMS certified broadcast meteorologist at Weather Nation, located in Denver, Colorado. There he leads a team of more than a dozen meteorologists in communicating the daily national and regional weather headlines. Steve has been interested in weather since he was just 7 years old, when he would collect the weather information for his father's race car to see how it affected the vehicle. Steve has been a broadcast meteorologist for 16 years, working in Colorado, Florida, and Vermont. He has his bachelor's of science in meteorology from Lyndon State College in Vermont. And Steve, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely, Gideon, and thank you so much. And Gideon, you're going to stay with us in the background, right? Okay, awesome. Well, I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you, Gideon, for that introduction. Welcome to the Jamposium 2024. This is so cool. So we're so glad that, not only you're joining us for the Jamposium this year again, but it's a leap day. It's an extra day of the year, and you're choosing to be here with us. So we totally appreciate it. Really love that. Let's get right into it. You're watching the first of our speakers and our first of 3 webinars today for the Jamposium Day 1, which is going to be a really interesting day. Excited to learn a lot today and a big learning experience. So let's bring in our speakers for today. First, we have Michael Musher. He is currently with NOAA Communications and is a public affairs specialist with the National Weather Service. Michael's been a dedicated meteorologist and communicator his entire career. Started with NWS in 2002, began with the National Weather Center, with the Weather Prediction Center, which was called the Hydrometeorological Prediction Center, HPC at the time. Not surprised they changed that because that's a super long word, under the NCEI, or NCEP really, National Centers for Environmental Prediction. He also served as a well-versed operational meteorologist. 2018, he transitioned to the National Weather Service Operations Center, was on the forefront and leader of impact-based decisions and support services with that, while constantly communicating and collaborating with NWS leadership and regional operation centers along with federal partners. Mike started his career in the private sector at the Weather Channel as behind-the-scenes meteorologist and forecaster. So Mike, it's good to have another network working meteorologist from a weather network here. And he has his BS in meteorology and earth sciences from Millersville in Pennsylvania. So that's Mike. And then Doug is joining us, Douglas LeCompte. He's executive editor of WeatherWise magazine. He's been contributing, having been a contributing editor since 1980. So nice work, Doug. He grew up in Ridgefield, New Jersey, showing an early fascination with weather, especially snowstorms. How many people have that story in Jersey with nor'easters and snowstorms? And Doug built his own weather station during childhood, summers in rural New Hampshire. That's like the perfect start to a blossoming weather career. So Doug earned his BS in meteorology at NYU in 1968, served as a weather officer in the U.S. Air Force. Thank you, Doug, and including a stint as a part-time weathercaster for American Forces TV in Okinawa. I'm sure we could go on a whole other webinar on your work, Doug, on that. That sounds exciting. He left the U.S. Air Force in 1972, obtained a master's in atmospheric science at the State University of New York, Albany, so SUNY Albany. And Doug then began a long career with the government, including roles in monitoring weather extremes, calculating their costs. He retired in 2010, but he's still monitoring global weather for WeatherWise magazine, creating annual summaries of the top weather events based on costs, impact, size, and rarity. So that's interesting. And that'll tie into our discussion today, which is recent extreme events. So I'm going to start to share my screen and we'll dive into Mike first. Mike's prepared some slides, and then we'll bring Doug in for some comments and also talk about how this winter has played out so far. So let me share my screen for this presentation. And hopefully you can all still see that just fine. And we'll hit play mode here. So again, welcome to our recent extreme events, weather-wise and what's on the horizon. I'm Steve Glazier. If you're just joining us and you missed the introduction, I'll just do a quick summary of what I do. I'm a New Englander. I went to Linden State College. Now it's called Vermont State University. It's been called a couple of different things in the past few years, but it was a great college to learn broadcast meteorology, and I've been working 16 years in the industry in Vermont and Florida, and now I'm in Denver, Colorado. So that's where Weather Nation is based. And a day in the life of Steve Glazier's shoes would be working a 10-hour shift, go into Weather Nation. You prep for a couple hours on the top weather stories regionally and nationally. I do about 20 weather hits a day, and those are a blend of top weather stories and local, hyper-local regional forecast. And then writing out web stories, social posts, and researching more topics. And for instance, I was recording yesterday at that green screen, well, not that green screen, but a green screen, recording a stand-up for a story about landspout tornadoes. So the day can throw anything at us. But at Weather Nation, we cover top headlines across the country and also those top regional headlines that are taking place. So if you've been an AMS Weather Band member for a while, thank you, first of all, and also thank you for being part of this Jamposium. And you may have seen some publicity about how I gave a talk last year. It was in December. It was the top 10 weather events of 2023. Now, this talk is not going to be a repeat of that, but I just showed that, and that's also on our Weather Band page. You can go on and log in and then click on webinars, and you can see upcoming webinars and also past ones, and you can watch that in replay. But we had our top 10 weather events from Weather Nation across the country for last year. So we went through that. And again, this won't be a recap of that exactly. But we want to dive into, what's been happening since last year, pretty much since last year. This is more of a recent webinar. But also, if you've been following the weather this week, I mean, crazy news. The Texas A&M Information Service, or Incident Information Service for the Forest Service, just tweeted out this morning, or posted on X this morning, that that Smokehouse Creek fire that began earlier this week grew to about 1 million acres. It's just crazy, making it, at least tentatively, unless this size gets refined, Texas's largest wildfire in history. That is crazy, and it's burnt a little bit into Oklahoma. And then just yesterday, Detroit, National Weather Service Office Detroit, posted that they had confirmed a very early morning tornado. It was yesterday morning, about 1 in the morning, EF2. It was the first recorded EF2 in February in Southeast Michigan since 1974. So there you have it. You have just this week, past couple of days, 2 significant events, and that are certainly on the rarer side, if not, you could say, the extreme side. So we want to bring in now Mike and Doug, and we'll begin with you, Mike. I'll stop sharing my screen so that you can share some of your slides. And Mike's crafted a couple of slides about what he does at NOAA and the communication and the work through these events and highlighting some of the events. So Mike, the floor is yours.
All right, Steve, thank you so much. I'm going to, as Steve said, share my screen here, and just let me know if you can see my slides.
Yeah, looking good.
Okay, all right, great. Thanks so much. So it's great to be with everyone here this afternoon or this morning, wherever you are. My name is Mike Musher. I am a public affairs specialist and meteorologist with NOAA's National Weather Service. And I threw together a few slides for you this morning. I'm going to start kind of nationally, break it down regionally, and then talk about a couple smaller scale events that occurred during the month of February here. So 2023 was quite an active year for much of the United States, and that includes Alaska and Hawaii. Our partners within NESDIS, the National Centers for Environmental Information, produced this graphic for last year. There were 28 separate billion-dollar weather and climate disasters across the United States, from anywhere from severe weather, tornadoes, hail, flooding, drought, hurricanes, and of course the devastating wildfire that impacted Maui, I believe it was last August. 2023 was also the 5th warmest average annual temperature on record for the United States. It was the 3rd driest annual precipitation on record. There was the 4th most named tropical cyclones in the Atlantic Basin. And then, as I just mentioned, the deadliest wildfire in over a century. So I'm going to shift regionally now. And obviously, we've been in El Niño, and we've seen a barrage of atmospheric rivers that have moved into California once again this year. Remember, last year was quite an episode where much of California was getting impacted. This year, it seems like more central down to Southern California, where these active storm systems move in from the Pacific, tap into some subtropical and tropical moisture. You know, you hear that term quite a bit, pineapple connection, where moisture is transported all the way from Hawaii to the West Coast. Well, these are 90-day observed precipitation amounts across the state of California. And I wanted to focus on San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego. You can see all 3 locations. This is off the international airport sites of each city here. You know, San Francisco is over 13 inches since December 1st. Los Angeles, about 15 and a half. And in San Diego, just over 9 inches. So I wanted to take a little bit closer look at all 3 sites, and especially Los Angeles and San Diego. So the graphic here on the right here is the 90-day percent precipitation, or normal precipitation. And you can see all the purples, blues down in Southern California here. That's saying as much as, precipitation about 150 to as much as 400 to 500% above normal for the 90-day period of December 1st through most of February here. The first chart up top here is based for Los Angeles International Airport. As I mentioned, they've had about 15 and a half inches of rain, and normally for that 90-day period, they have about 7.5 inches. We're talking about double the amount of precipitation they normally see. And their yearly average precipitation from March 1st through February 26th is actually 11.6 inches. So they've received more than yearly amounts in Los Angeles over the last 90 days. And the pattern has changed a little bit, the weather pattern, but quite an impressive rainfall event here for Los Angeles over the last 90 days. Now, shifting down to San Diego, the lower left chart here, we talked about just over 9 inches there at the international airport there in San Diego. Normally they get about 5.5, 5.6 inches. So it's almost double what they normally see. And then look at the yearly average for San Diego, just over 9 inches too. So they've received basically their yearly rainfall in a 90-day period. And obviously this is the time of the year, their wet season. But the last 2 years have been pretty remarkable with El Niño and these atmospheric rivers, impacting California. So that has another impact, and it's snowfall across the country. And I received these graphics from my colleagues at the Weather Prediction Center. So the top left graphic here is the summed daily no-risk snowfall amounts from October 1st through February 25th. You can see the snowfall. Obviously, the western terrain really shows up well here. You can see the snow that blends out into the central and northern plains of the upper Midwest, and then out over the Northeast. In the lower right, though, is the snowfall departure from, or at least through February 25th here. It's a 15-year mean. And this is pretty remarkable. I mean, we're in El Niño, so typically storm systems move into the West Coast, especially California, and then slide along the southern tier of the country and off the eastern seaboard. Look how much below normal the northern plains and upper Midwest is here we're talking as much as 2 feet to 3 feet below the average across North Dakota, South Dakota, into Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the UP of Michigan. And that even translates downwind of the Great Lakes. We haven't had too many Clipper-like systems or really cold systems that have impacted the eastern 2/3 of the country. So even lake effect snow is well below normal, even though Buffalo saw quite an event back in December. So, and I wanted to point out one site here, Minneapolis, St. Paul. So since July 1st, 2023, they've had about 14 inches of snow. Normally they average close to 40 inches. So quite a deficit across the upper Midwest. And just wanted to plug in that NOAA will be announcing its U.S. spring and flood outlook on March 21st. And this deficit of snowfall across the northern plains and upper Midwest could have a big impact on the potential of flooding for the spring here. Going to shift now to some local events. This was on February 8th. The first ever tornado was confirmed for the month of February in Wisconsin. We had a decent shortwave that was coming out of the Midwest there, triggered some thunderstorms and some severe weather and tornado just south of Madison. All that activity moved towards Milwaukee. We even had a couple tornadoes down in Illinois here, but the one tornado that rolled just south and east of Madison was actually EF2 and caused one injury, and this was the track. This was from the WFO there on Milwaukee. There were 2 confirmed tornadoes, an EF2 and an EF1. And as I mentioned, this is the first ever tornado that occurred in the month of February for Wisconsin. And Steve already captured the event in the past day or two that was west of Chicago with some tornadoes, and then the tornadoes in Michigan, even down near Columbus, Ohio, the last few days here. Another pretty impressive mesoscale event took place on February 16th in the Mid-Atlantic. We had a system tracking from the Ohio Valley through the Mid-Atlantic off the eastern seaboard, just south of the DC metro area. And at the original time, the forecast presented it as maybe a wide swath of maybe 2 to 4, 3 to 6 inches of snow from the Ohio Valley through the Mid-Atlantic. Instead, what we got was this dramatic mesoscale heavy snowfall band that developed near my alma mater there at Millersville University, north of Philadelphia, and then over towards just south of New York City and maybe clipping Long Island there. On the right here is kind of the 24-hour accumulation ending 12Z or 8 a.m. that morning from the Ohio Valley into the Mid-Atlantic here. And there's a close-up look. Over a foot of snow occurred in this small snow band from just north of Harrisburg over towards Reading and Allentown towards Long Island. There was a max snowfall amount of almost 14 inches in Pennsylvania. In New Jersey, 13 inches near Frenchtown, and New York, Tottenville had 10 inches. It's just a really remarkable event, and I just wanted to capture some of these local events that have occurred during the month of February, and they're probably approaching the recent extreme weather events that have occurred across the country. And finally, I don't have a slide for this, but I wrote it down, 168 record high temperatures over the last 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And some of those record highs in the plains up towards the Great Lakes were almost, I think they're February monthly records over the last 3 days here. And obviously we've got that real amplified upper level trough over the west. We saw tremendous warm advection ahead of it, but really remarkable to have so many record highs in February, especially late February, for the eastern and central 2/3 of the United States. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions or comments this morning. And I'll hand it over to Gideon if there's any questions. But I just want to thank everybody for inviting me to participate today. feel free to reach out to me at Public Affairs, and we've got a team at Public Affairs. So if you're in the media and you're ever looking for the right expert, just feel free to contact us and we'll get you the right expert to speak to. And that's all I have today.
Hey, Mike, it's Steve here. And thank you for that. That's interesting. You know what I really like, Mike, is and I don't have it. I always have to search for it a certain way. Maybe you could direct me more quickly. I know at the end of the month, shortly after the month ends, there is that monthly summary. That's nice. You know, for the lower 48, it actually highlights some significant events across the country. I really do enjoy that product.
Yeah, that's from NESDIS with National Centers for Environmental Information. Actually, they'll be holding next Friday on the 8th, recap of February. And I believe that's a live event. So if you just go to NOAA.gov, you should be able to find the particulars with that upcoming event there.
And to be honest, when we're recapping our top 10 weather events at the end of the year, I honestly kind of forget. It gets into the gray area, like what happened back in spring that was significant, and those maps are a great reminder. Hey, Mike, if you can stay with us here and have you unmuted, we had a couple of questions. If you want to defer these to anyone else, feel free, but keep the questions coming, my friends. We'll kind of go through a few at a time. We'll take two right now, and then we'll go through another two with Doug here. So Mike, Fred asks, how much did the strong El Nino affect the West Coast rainfall and also that lack of snow in the Midwest, referring to this El Nino pattern?
Yeah, I would think it played a considerable factor into both. I mean, I'm not an expert on it. Most of the folks at the Climate Prediction Center would be better to answer this, but from my 20-some years in the field, it played a significant factor into both events, the heavy rain in California and deficit of snow.
And then, Mike, Katie asked about that, one of your last slides, that mid-Atlantic stripe of snow. So what made it so hard to predict how big it would be? And my thought would be just that band of heavy snow rates that kind of set up, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it was a quick moving system that was moving through the Ohio Valley mid-Atlantic. Obviously, there was some overrunning, but boundary layer temperatures, surface temperatures were a little questionable as you move south of the Mason-Dixon line in Pennsylvania. And the mesoscale factor just took, you had probably some slantwise banding within that narrow band. And I'm sure there'll be studies on it, but it was a remarkable event. I mean, we always talk about these mesoscale events. This one really, really showed up. And anyhow, if you were north of Philly and Harrisburg over towards Long Island, what a dramatic event within a 24-hour period. I think they were getting like snowfall rates at the time, like 2 to 3 inches an hour in some spots there, like you mentioned, Steve. So the snowfall rates were absolutely incredible. And I think the majority of it happened during the overnight period, which, there was no solar component. So it really helped the snowfall produce there.
What's interesting too is that those cities, or at least the geographical area, just finished a snow drought that they had for the past couple of winters. So, which was kind of ties into the story. This record long stretch without an inch of snow, and then you get clobbered there.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad you mentioned the 160 plus record highs, because I was also seeing yesterday how some WFOs were saying they had some of their largest 24-hour temperature drops as the cold front passed by, which I found fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had too many cold Arctic outbreaks, but this was a classic sharp cold front that was moving through the eastern 2/3 of the country. But the warming that took place ahead of it, and it might have had some to do too with the lack of snowpack across the eastern 2/3 of the country for allowing temperatures to warm so dramatically. But it was quite an event, Steve. Yeah, I wanted to create a slide for it, but I just didn't have time. But anyhow, I mean, it seems like weekly anymore. There's an extreme event.
I know, it does. Yeah, it's been a pretty wild winter. So Cole and Ben, I see your questions here. If you have any, I'll get to those in just a moment. If you have any questions, feel free to chat in there. I love it. Also, we would love to continue on with Doug, and I'm going to bring Doug in. So Doug, thanks for your time. Let me share the screen so you can talk about this for the viewers. And I guess if you're listening in, we're kind of showing a 9-panel screen here of AO and ENSO kind of oscillations so far this winter. So Doug, can you see this okay?
Yeah, I can see it. Thank you. Hope you hear me okay without too much of an echo.
This is a little bit of one, but we'll work through it. That's fine, my friend. So Doug, talk about what we're seeing on the screen here and how it relates to this winter.
Getting back to my days at the Climate Prediction Center, we specialized in ENSO, El Nino, and La Nina. I had a colleague who actually had a T-shirt that he wore, said, "Blame it on El Nino." This is one case where it'd be appropriate to wear that shirt. Sorry, I don't have one. But I think the point here is El Nino played a major role in the anomalies that we've been seeing this winter. You tend to have mildness in the northern tier and wetness along the Gulf Coast, and of course lots of snow along the West Coast. However, it's not just El Nino. It's the large-scale circulation pattern known as the Arctic Oscillation. And when you compare the two, you look at the map on the upper right-hand side, which shows what happens with temperature when you have both positive AO and a warm ENSO, El Nino. And it's a very strong tendency for abnormal warmth, just where we've seen it this year in the U.S. So that goes a long ways to explain what's going on. And let's not forget that cold wave in January with the coldest NFL football game ever played, I believe. No, one of the four coldest NFL games ever played on the 13th of January. Kansas City, Miami Dolphins. Can you imagine a Miami team playing when the temperature is -6 degrees? And, well, most people were focusing on Taylor Swift anyways, but that's another story. So we have had some cold spells, and let's not, oh, by the way, as an Air Force veteran, that was amazing. EF-1 at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio that damaged hangars and at least one jet plane. It takes a lot of wind to damage a plane that's built for flying at 400, 500 plus miles an hour. So it gives you some idea of how powerful tornadoes can be. Something else. Okay, I'm not one of these. I'm kind of glad no one else has mentioned it. I'm not one of these that blames climate change on everything that happens. But as a background, if the world is gradually getting warmer, and you may see more and more of these instances of out-of-season tornadoes because you've got more warm air, and also warmer Gulf of Mexico will be a factor in these winter tornado outbreaks. So can't get around that. Also, let's not forget Alaska. We have Minneapolis. What a contrast between, say, Minneapolis and Anchorage. Minneapolis, total seasonal snowfall of 14 inches, which is ridiculous. Greatest depth, Minneapolis, 7 inches, the same as my greatest depth here in Arlington, Virginia. which is crazy. However, in Anchorage, Alaska, they've been hit by one storm after another this winter. They've run out of places to put the snow all month long. You look at the daily data, it's been like 30 plus inches of snow on the ground, 119 inches for the season to date, which is around twice normal. And I don't have confirmation on this, but it's certainly close to an all-time record for snowfall. So that's going on up there. So you have lots of contrasts that are happening. And I could go on about what's going on around the world, but I better pause there and for comments and questions.
And we do have one, Doug. Since you grew up, I'm going to aim this one right at you, Doug, since you grew up in or spent a lot of time in New Jersey. Cole asks about a couple of weeks ago, we had that heavy snow, heavy localized snow with kind of a smaller weather system. So Cole was wondering if that's rare to get a big, band of snow or big snow totals with a smaller weather system like we did a couple of weeks ago in parts of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's really rare. All right, about 4 inches in Hoboken, Central Park, a couple of inches. And then what, 10 inches plus locally in Brooklyn? I mean, this is crazy. And as shown before, you had that heavy band of snow across central New Jersey. And yeah, that's really rare. And yeah, I got a feeling there'll be some scientific studies about that one.
I'm going to bring, I'll put you on pause, Doug, for the moment and take you off the hot seat to bring in Mike. We had a question from Ben, and he was in this, and Mike, this is something that I've been hearing about a little bit more about, and this is kind of, our webinar is about recent extreme events, but also maybe if we can get a glimpse on the future about the hurricane season. Seems like a lot of eyeballs are on it, Mike, because it's been so busy past decade, or at least a little bit shy of a decade. And, I've seen some warm water in the main development region already. We'll see if that sticks around, but it is concerning already. Plus the indications are that the El Nino would fade by the peak of the hurricane season. So Mike, can you add to any of that of what that may or may not bring, or if it's too soon to know for the hurricane season?
It's sort of too soon, but there's indications that, as you just mentioned, Steve, I know my colleagues over at the Climate Prediction Center were already talking about El Nino beginning to perhaps relax a little bit, and La Nina beginning to maybe take shape this summer. And typically that means an active Atlantic hurricane season. NOAA will be making its official announcement on what conditions are going to potentially impact or support tropical development in the Atlantic, and that's usually in May. And the lead expert there at CPC will be giving a presentation on that. I'm not sure if the date has been settled yet, but the official forecast will be coming out in May.
Yep, I always look forward to that too. And you start to see them come out from CSU in early April, and all of the private weather companies doing it too. So it gets in the forefront. Can't believe so what's today, the last day of February? So March, April, May, we're something like less than 100 days probably since to the beginning of the hurricane season. So it's coming up. Doug, I'll bring you back in. Doug, do you look ahead this far ahead of the hurricane season, or not just yet?
Yes, I do. That's the advantage of being retired from the government. I can say stuff they probably wouldn't want me to say. If and you've mentioned this, if that warm water continues in what's known as the MDR, the main development region, off the coast of Africa, along with the end of the El Nino and possible La Nina late summer, we're in trouble. I mean, that's that means a strong tendency for hurricanes. And yeah, I'm very concerned for the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico coming up with this pattern. One of the main questions is if that warm water will persist over the Atlantic. And if it does, I mean, that's a few months out. I've also looked at some long-range seasonal forecasts, and they show that signal of above normal precipitation in a band extending from Africa into the Caribbean in the summer and fall, which is hinting at an active storm track going across Atlantic. So yeah, I'm very concerned about that.
Hey Doug, let me stay with you here. Peter was wondering, what do the number of days in ENSO and AO diagrams represent? I think it's in the quotation marks. It says 224 days, 190 days, 308.
I'll be totally honest with you. I played no role in designing these particular graphics, so I'm not actually sure what that means. So maybe I better not guess. I guess they're looking at examples in the past in order to form these charts, and need to talk to some of the that develop the charts.
I know. I was looking at the same thing, and I'm like, "What is that?" So we'll find out. I'm sure someone on here knows, and they'll chime in the chat. Speaking of the chat, I believe everyone has access to it. I saw in the chat that Mr. William put in a link to the NCEI, news for January, and you can kind of see what I referenced earlier. It's interesting, Doug, about the pattern, because I was looking at, and even Mike, you showed the lack of snow in the upper Midwest, and I was also looking at how it's been very cloudy too, like a really cloudy, not snowy stretch. It's kept the minimum temperature super warm. Our daytime highs have also been warmer, but I think that the biggest departure has been the overnight lows, which can be the case in the winter time because you're not getting that cooling. So Mike, you'd mentioned that the flood outlook. You teased ahead in a few weeks the flood outlook's coming up, and you said that the flood outlook could be impacted. And I know a lot of winter and springs, we get that flood outlook in. It says, moderate. Well, I'm using these terms loosely. Moderate or elevated risk of flooding in these zones because of how much snowpack on the Missouri River, on the Mississippi River. Can you give any insight of how that flooding outlook may be impacted this year with the snowpack currently?
Yeah, I mean, I think current trends are that the flood threat could be below what it normally is during the springtime. There's still, a few weeks to play out here, whether we get a blockbuster snow event or something like that across the Midwest. But I think early indications are that it could be trending to below normal than near average or above average. But without being involved in the process, I can't say for sure. I believe, like I said, I think the official announcement's the 21st of March.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to that. I always like those outlooks, and it's another sign of spring, and the equinox is on the 19th this year, so signs of spring are coming around. Doug, let me bring you in. We had and Doug, as you look at the screen, you can see the Texas fire, right?
Right.
So we had a kind of a comment, and I know you commented about this too, because Philip in our Q&A, feel free to drop one in there, by the way. What a nasty combination of the wind and dryness in Texas. So Philip, I think, was just kind of looking at your comment of if you've been watching what's going on in the panhandle of Texas this week. Have you been watching? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. It hasn't been all that dry this season in northern Texas. In fact, January was wet, above normal. But this shows you how quickly fire danger can crop up. You have about a 10, 15-day period dry without any rain. low humidity, strong winds, and those are the ingredients. And it's kind of a rough parallel, I'll admit, but it does make me think a little bit about what happened in Hawaii, the island of Maui, last August. And when you had the powerful winds, some dry grasses, and I haven't officially heard what caused it. I'm assuming some power lines got blown over, and things get bad very quickly. And I don't know, has anyone heard what the cause is of the Texas fires? I really haven't heard that.
I didn't hear about it either. I was just chatting with a coworker about this yesterday night. It's still officially had a cause unknown. I was mentioning to my coworker that a lot of times, it could be a electric line. It could be someone that had sometimes it's even someone that had burned something a day or two prior, but there's still enough warmth that it can get flared up. So I haven't heard exactly, but I'm glad you mentioned that, Doug, because in this instance, I heard that it was difficult because there were a ton of evacuations. I think that there were thousands of people being evacuated, but they were also closing some roads too because of the fire. So that made it difficult for some to get out. And then I know in Hawaii, that kind of same thing happened where things were closing down, but also people were trying to flee. And it was this fires and floods. Those are my least favorite, but especially fires because we had one here. I'm located on the Front Range in Denver. And I remember just a couple of years ago in December where we had a fire. And I remember looking from work, just up on the horizon, there was just a dark plume. It looked like it was, Denver gets the brown cloud, the low air that gets compressed and it stays there. But it was like a super dark plume. And that thing just tore through neighborhoods and so fast too, so quickly. So fires are just some of my least favorite. Q&A. Okay, I see a bunch of icons here, a bunch of notifications in the Q&A. So this is great, folks. Thank you so much for these. The wind in the Northwest, Philip says the wind in the Northwest has been especially strong this winter. I know we didn't touch on the Northwest too much. From what I've been covering at Weather Nation, the Northern Rockies have been kind of dry. A lot of the weather systems have been drying out over Montana and Wyoming. We've had a little bit of drought development there, low snow totals. And I would say actually it's been kind of low up into Canada too, because I was hearing from a friend who went up to it's blanking on me, the big ski resort outside of Vancouver. And they were saying that it's been kind of rainy, not that snowy. Doug, have you looked into the Northwest at all I know you're located mid-Atlantic, so it's kind of a little far away from you.
Yeah, in fact, I believe the U.S. Drought Monitor has actually been showing some drought. This is as of last week, anyhow, in the Northwest, in the interior. But that's changing quickly, I think. Now we've got all these storms, same systems causing the snow in Alaska coming down southeastward and affecting the Northwest. So, yeah. They can actually use the precipitation. As you know, this is a big deal for upcoming water supplies across the West.
Hey, Mike, can I bring you in, talk about some fire stuff if how that affects your work? Because last year, a lot of folks realized how these wildfires can affect them far away. Like in New York City, we had that huge orange cloud come through, and a lot of folks that live in California or the West are like, yeah, we get this every other year. But Northeast cities were like, wow, what is this? And that was one of our top weather stories of last year. It was number 9 on our list at Weather Nation, all the Canadian fires. So we had a couple of questions about that. Mike, did you have to do any certain work for that? If you recall last year for the fires, did that affect your day-to-day flow or work at all?
Yeah, I mean, I was in a different role back then, more of a meteorologist at that point. But yeah, we were informing both Weather Service and NOAA leadership of what was going on. And I think what happened there was that the jet stream was a big proponent of it, where it kind of drove the smoke down towards the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. And then once I got down here, the overall steering flow was pretty light. So it had nowhere to go real quickly here. It was a remarkable event because I live in Maryland, and I remember at least one day how smoky it was, but the pictures out of New York City and that were, you would think of, it was like the end of days or something like that. But anyhow, yeah, you know, I don't have no clue right now what the fire season's gonna look like. I know on this particular event in the Texas Panhandle, obviously that strong cold front came out of the west, really drove up winds. There were already pretty dry fuels, even though, as Doug mentioned, precipitation wasn't necessarily below normal for the Texas Panhandle. But this is where NOAA really steps up, and not just the weather forecast office that, you know, produced great IDSS services to firefighters there, but it's the overall IMETs, the meteorologists that go out to these fires and basically provide the Forest Service, the agency, the just the firefighters in general, of how quickly weather conditions can change. And it really goes into the motto of the Weather Service, keeping you know, protecting lives and property. And just wanted to mention that aspect gets forgotten about sometimes.
So Ted and Ed in the Q&A asked kind of similar questions about predicting this season's wildfire activity in Canada. And I know, Mike, you said it's very difficult to do. And I'll kind of piggyback off that, because while you were answering that, Mike, I was just thinking of what you mentioned, and one of your recent significant events was last year's atmospheric rivers in California. And I know at about this point last year, maybe about a month from now, there was a big concern about, you know, how bad could this fire season be? Because, you know, we've had so much moisture, there's going to be a great bloom. And then by the time summer rolls around, it could be an epic, well, it could be a very busy fire season. But I'm just reading something just on my phone for the 2023 fire year in California from CAL FIRE. And they said that it was marked by proactive management, favorable weather conditions. They saw a substantial decrease in the number of fires and acreage burned. So that's super interesting, because you would think like totally wet winter, that's the next summer we could dry out, because that's almost, from my understanding, that's almost what happened in Canada. They had a quick end of winter. The snow melted fast. It was a pretty decent snowpack, and then it became dry for a while. And then California had a really rough year. So I think it's kind of a hard thing to predict, because a lot goes into it. I know in 2020, there were a bunch of fires in California that were just started by lightning. So a bunch of these complex fires, because you had thunderstorms that just started a bunch of them. I think Mendocino was one of them. And August Complex, I think, was another, unless I'm confusing them because there's so many fires. But Doug, is there any, do you look at fire weather too, and that kind of thing? Or if I kind of stepped on your answer?
No, I don't try to forecast seasonal fire weather. For all the reasons you stated, that is really difficult. I mean, I looked at Canada, and by the way, that sudden explosion of fires on June 1st in Quebec, that started all that smoke coming down. I still don't get it. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think there are a bunch of zombie alien laser fire starters going on there. But it sure looks suspicious the way all these fires just suddenly popped up.
I know. I had a coworker of mine say, I saw something on the news that, these fires, you can watch them being ignited in the afternoon. And I was like, well, okay, come. And I brought them over to my computer, and I'm like, well, in the afternoon, you just get such mixing, and there's so much more airflow, and it's a drier part of the day, and they just really flare up, and you can kind of see the pulse of them from night to day. But yeah, that was incredible. So Q&A, I believe we've gone through all of our questions. We've got about 10 till the top of the hour. Perhaps if Mike and Doug, if you don't have any last closing statements, about the recent extreme and events, anything like that? Mike, do you want to start?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Well, once again, thanks for having me today. I tried to pick out some cases, regional and small scale, but yeah, you mentioned about the lack of fires last season in California, and I think one of the other factors that contributed maybe the wildfires not being as bad in California last year was the lack of offshore wind events. We didn't see too many cases of Santa Ana winds and things like that. But I mean, it's tough to foresee what the future will bring in this day of climate playing a factor into weather overall. But yeah, it's been kind of a remarkable winter if you look at it. I mean, last year we saw California get hit hard. We're seeing that again this year. I think drought's going to become a bigger issue this year across the Midwest due to the lack of snow this winter, and then we'll just have to see how overall temperatures impact the United States. But yeah, 2023 was quite a year for weather events.
And 2024.
Yeah, they're always. Yep, exactly. And I'm sure when we meet this time next year, there'll be another handful of events to review and capture. But yeah, no, it the weather obviously has prediction to it, and as Doug is probably well aware, I mean, we can go out a few months in advance, but it's hard to predict, 6 months to a year from now of what may occur.
Yeah, there's another confession there. I probably shouldn't say this. I sometimes have regrets that I helped develop the U.S. Drought Monitor seasonal forecast. Because it's tough. It's really not easy, and you see how quickly things can change, whether it's Hawaii or Texas Panhandle or whatever. A couple of weeks of hot, dry weather, and things can change quickly. In fact, we're the ones, I think, who coined the term flash drought way back when. So it's tough. Globally, I did want to take another look at the bigger picture. We have jet streams on steroids going across the North Pacific and the North Atlantic. Maybe that's good if you're taking a flight to Heathrow, but they've just been battered by storm after storm after storm in UK and Europe. So I do want to point that out as important weather extremes causing a lot of damage with flooding and power lines down. And we'll see. Well, that certainly should change as we get into the warmer time of the season. Also, the drought, heat, and dryness in Europe last summer. I need to plug in the laptop. Okay. Some people, I don't believe it, but a certain insurance company is pointing to thousands of deaths related to heat last summer in Europe. And I'll just point out, as someone who's in the business of assessing the impact of weather extremes, it's just very hard to determine how many deaths are actually directly attributed to heat. I'll just make the point, above normal temperatures can be beneficial in the winter. You save money, probably save lives on the roads, less snow, but there are bad things that happen, especially in summer. It is a killer. And for those of us who spend some time in New England and who have tested positive for Lyme disease because of unusually warm weather, it's very important to have these cold snaps in New England. People may not like it, but bad things happen when it's unusually mild in the winter and spring. So I'll leave you with that.
Oh, it's something I always forget, Doug. So I'll try not to curse the cold too much next time.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Doug, and thank you, Mike, for your time today. Really appreciate it. That wraps up our first part of it. And I always get a little excitement when we end a little video call 5 minutes early. It's like, oh, I get to stretch my legs. So we'll probably end it just a few minutes early and bring AMS headquarters back in. I know that, Mike, the slide you showed of the billion-dollar disasters, I'm sure there are a lot of people watching that were impacted or know someone who was impacted by them. I had a slight impact on the little icon over Colorado that you saw. There's a hailstorm in June. I saw it coming. I said, I have an older car, and I said, I'll just let it sit out there. Now I've got these little hail dents in my car, and then I was trying to grow, my garden, and my plants were kind of still younger, and that hail just tore through the garden. So that was my
Yeah,
small impact.
I remember that event because I think there were videos of people at was it Red Rocks, the
Yes. Yep.
amphitheater there, running for cover. But I just wanted to mention one more thing. Doug brought it up. Despite all those billion-dollar disasters, the number one weather-related killer is heat, and that's often forgotten about. That people think of floods or hurricanes or all that. It's heat, and I tell you, NOAA's making a really big push with that, with a big announcement in April of an experimental product called Heat Risk. That's really going to help forecasters communicate what heat is and really try to help those vulnerable populations that are at significant risk for heat. So anyhow, great talking with both of you today.
You too. Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Gideon, I'll hand it over to you, man.
All righty. Well, Steve, Michael, and Doug, thank you so much for everything, for taking the time to participate and bring this information to our viewers. Viewers, just to let you know, all Jamposium sessions will be immediately available to AMS and Weatherband members at amsweatherband.org. And they will be available after a 3-month waiting period for the general public. Let's see. Another thing too, if you have any further questions or if you want to talk about the webinar, AMS Weatherband members are welcome to discuss on the Weatherband Community Forum. We're always looking for folks to participate in there and bring their insights to the community. And for those of you that are joining us that are not members of the Weatherband, please feel free to visit the link in the chat. I just put that out there to everybody to learn more about Weatherband. So that being said, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you. Thank you very much. And please join us for Science Communication in Today's Media Landscape, which will start at 1:15 p.m. Eastern Time. To join the next session, you will be asked to go to visit the program page, which I've also provided a link for in the chat there. And that should take care of you. So with that being said, again, Steve, Doug, Michael, thank you so much for participating. And audience, we'll see you at the next session in a few minutes. Goodbye, everyone.